everybody. I am your temporary host. Matt is not here, but he'll be back next week. Today I have Efficient Geek and Soul and Real Cat Will on it. How are you guys doing?
Doing good. Get ready to
Yeah.
talk about our topic today.
Also, it's a few days late, but first of all, happy birthday to you, Ben,
Oh, thank
Happy
you.
and also
birthday!
happy birthday to my grandmother, which I just came back from the celebratory dinner.
Oh,
It was a
nice.
lot of
Oh,
fun.
nice. Happy birthday, 50s grandma.
Happy birthday, Grandma. Um, so you picked the topic. Why don't you introduce it?
Yes. So this week we're doing top 5 comic book / superhero villains. So they don't have to be based off of a comic book. It needs to be like a comic hero movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
It was a fun one. So why don't we get started? Well, we're here at number 5, so.
All right. So my number 5 is from Thor Ragnarok, and I'm going with Hela because I think that Kate Blanchett is, one, she looks beautiful in the role, and two, she's just such a compelling villain. She has that speech where she's telling like her origin to everyone in Asgard, and then they're like, "I don't know who you are," and then she's like, "Did you not listen to me? What I just said?" Like, and just the fact too that she's just a boss ass bitch. Like, I'm here for Hela. I love Thor Ragnarok. It's one of my favorite MCU movies, and Hela is definitely a big proponent of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really the beauty of Taika, that he's
Mhm.
able to take these characters and somehow make them both menacing, funny, and compelling, and all that into one, and look good doing it. That,
Mhm.
that that's some of the best stuff that Taika can do in all of his movies, and I can't wait to see what he does with Christian Bale in the next Thor movie.
Yes. Yes.
And she's powerful. She
Oh,
broke Thor's hammer. That's not easy to do.
Yeah.
not only that, she took on basically all of Asgard's army by herself, and she barely
Right.
broke a sweat.
And my favorite meme out there is someone put like a picture of Anthony Hopkins when he was younger with black hair, and then that she has black hair, and then Loki has black hair, and they were like, "Is Loki really the one that's adopted? Because Thor's
Yeah.
over there being a blonde."
Uh,
And also, I don't even think Rene Russo has the same hair color as Chris Hemsworth does. So maybe there is something there.
yeah,
Who
maybe.
knows?
Who knows? Okay, I'll go. My number 5 is Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming.
Punt.
Okay. I
All
had a
right,
feeling.
50.
Yeah.
You're number 5.
Okay, so first of all, when I heard about this topic, first thing that I wanted to say was this. Just to point it out that there are a lot of options I could have taken. However, I had a really tough time with this topic because a lot of the ones that came to my mind aren't necessarily, I don't really consider them villains too much, because most of them are the heroes of their own stories. Like I mentioned to Ben before the show started, Magneto, Catwoman from Batman Returns. Even Loki is questionable because he did turn good at some point. And so the ones I chose are the ones that you can definitely consider them straight up villains. And my number 5 is still kind of treading that line, but it's actually Elijah Price, also known as Mr. Glass from the Unbreakable franchise. Now, I'm going to be honest, Unbreakable on its own, not really one of my favorites. Neither is Split. I did enjoy Glass, though. I liked Glass. I'm one of the few people that actually enjoy Glass. But looking at Unbreakable, even though you can tell that this character has gone through literal hell from birth, basically, and you feel sympathy for him for the majority of the movie before you know that he's the one pulling the strings behind everything. there's no questioning, there's no denying that he's the bad guy. He's definitely the villain. That he's doing all these things just to prove a point and to prove that he's not the only one like this. And I'm gonna be honest, I knew that he was the bad guy before the movie, before I watched the movie, because we live in an age of spoilers, and I haven't saw the movie when it came out. I saw it years later, but knowing that he's really the bad guy did not at all take away from the impact of that reveal, the whole Darth Vader twist at the end there. So that's why I still consider him to be one of the best superhero movie villains, even though he, technically speaking, doesn't have any superpowers. I think, as a matter of fact, he might actually be the only superhero movie villain that actually has super. I don't even know what the opposite of superpowers is. Super negative, super detractors. I don't know, because I don't even think there is a name for it yet. But that just shows you the creativity of of early M. Night Shyamalan movies.
I was going to say, wouldn't it be a super weakness?
Yeah, so a super weakness. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't think of that.
And with that, I haven't seen Unbreakable or Glass. The only one that I've seen is Split. And then you see at the end, and you're like, oh, this is referencing Unbreakable at the very end of that movie. Spoilers for anyone who's watching. but I love a villain that it gives you the reasons for why they are a villain, and you feel sympathy for them, but it doesn't excuse the fact that they are a villain, because it shows you why they went down the path they did, but they could have easily gone down another path. And I love those type of villains that you do feel sympathy for them.
Yeah, and case in point, Bruce Willis's character in that very same movie had sort of similar circumstances and went in a completely different direction.
So you should watch Unbreakable. I really like it. It's really good. It might be my favorite M. Night movie.
Okay. I'll have to do it. So my number 4 comes from the animated realm, and it might be one of the best Fantastic Four movies out there. From The Incredibles, I went with Syndrome. And oh man, such a good villain, because it really shows you this person was a super fan of Mr. Incredible. Mr. Incredible didn't give him the love that he thought he deserved as a super fan, which really shows a commentary on the way people treat famous people now, and like feel that that they deserve something out of them when really they're just normal people. And then he becomes a supervillain, and he's just like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make everyone a superhero. If everyone's a superhero, then no one is. Like that line, and I'm just like, But man, such a good villain. The fact too that you find out that he was Incrediboy, I think was the name that he gave himself. Yep. And just that whole movie, I love The Incredibles, and I love the fact too that we got the sequel. I love the sequel just as much. But Syndrome, so good. And I love too when he's like, S is for sitter. He's like, I couldn't have gone around going with a giant BS on my when he's at the door trying to get Jack. So yeah, I just love Syndrome. I love that movie.
I forget who voices him.
Ooh, let me check that out. But you can go ahead with your 4 while I check this.
No, and we can just talk about him for a second. I'll be honest.
Jason Lee.
Okay. I'll be honest. I'm one of the few people that actually prefers the sequel. The original's great, but I just think the second one is my favorite out of the two. And I think, again, going to your point, that movie and that character in and of itself was way ahead of its time. It was a foreshadowing of today's level of entitlement from certain fans and certain fandoms, where they think they owed something, that they deserve. We always. How many times have we seen it? The fans deserve better. How many times have we seen people say that? And we're seeing it today in fandoms all around. Obviously, no one's going to the extremes that that Buddy did, but it's an interesting look at how we view superheroes and celebrities and other such things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Hi.
Hi, Mom.
My number 4 is probably one of the more famous faces in the MCU. I have to put him on my list, Loki. Sure, he's not a pure villain, but when he goes down his villainous ways, he's great, and he's a great character at the same time. You really find his brothership with Thor, and you really see they really care about each other, but at the same time, he really some pretty messed up things.
Just like Mr. Glass. Going back to Mike.
Yeah, he could tear apart the Avengers without trying that hard, and that's pretty damn cool. So yeah, Loki, that's my number 4.
Yeah, but ultimately what he did was bring the Avengers together, just like the comics did.
Yeah.
But I can't wait for his standalone series.
I was just about to say that.
After the quality we got in WandaVision and most recently with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, can you imagine 2012's Loki as a series of just time traveling, dimension hopping shenanigans?
And that's the thing too. It's 2012's Loki. It's when Loki was the villain. It's not it's before he redeemed himself. So that's going to be very interesting. I'm sure Tom Hiddleston is having a lot of fun with that character, going back to his villainous ways.
He loves playing that character. Like after what he did in Comic-Con in 2012 or 13 for the Thor: The Dark World panel.
I forgot. Is 2012 Loki? Is his mother still alive?
Yes. We didn't go through that whole phase.
Okay.
And again, this is one of the reasons I didn't have him on my list, because he had such a character transformation that I don't consider him a villain anymore. Now, obviously, 2012's Loki is a villain, which we're going to see in a superhero TV show, not a movie. So, and we haven't seen that yet. So that's why we counted.
And I agree with 50. I was toying with putting him on my list, but after Thor Ragnarok, I can't really. Yeah. I don't view him as a villain anymore.
I do for some reason, but change your own 50.
Exactly.
Yeah, and just like Thanos said, no resurrections this time. It wasn't a resurrection; it was something else. Okay, so my number 5, and I'm just now noticing
You're number 4.
Sorry, number 4. My number 4, and I'm just now noticing it's technically the only DC villain on my list. However, it's Slade.
Really?
You have no idea what this is, right? It's Deathstroke from Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
Okay. I still haven't seen that one.
It's great. I mean, it came out the same year as Infinity War and Black Panther and Into the Spider-Verse. That was my second favorite comic book movie in that year, right after Infinity War, which is my all-time favorite comic book movie ever. But yeah, I love that movie so much because it's such a commentary on the way we view superhero content today. And I don't think a single character in that movie personifies it better than the character of Slade. And obviously, this goes back to the Teen Titans TV show from the early 2000s, where they had to name him Slade because they couldn't call him Deathstroke on a kids' TV show. It's a weird rule that they had back then, but yeah, Slade on this show, on this movie, is a great representation of his whole motive is how. And because Soul hasn't seen the movie, it's hard for me to talk about it without spoiling it. But
go ahead. It's fine. I'm fine with spoilers. I don't care.
You don't care?
Go for it.
Are you sure? Okay, so basically, Slade. It's not the Slade that you're familiar with. It's not Slade Wilson. It's Jade Wilson, who is a female, and she's like a Hollywood producer producing superhero movies. So she works with all the major superheroes, Batman and Superman and all the Justice League and stuff. And she's basically, all she does is produce movies with superheroes. And while all the superheroes go to their own premieres to watch themselves on the big screen, she puts on the Deathstroke persona, obviously as Slade, and she goes around committing crimes. And the only ones who can stop Slade are the Teen Titans, because no one wants to see movies about the sidekicks. No one wants to see Teen Titans movies, so there aren't any Teen Titans movies being produced. So, yeah, like I said, it's a huge major spoiler, and I couldn't really talk about this villain without spoiling too much. But, yeah, it's such the way we've made these characters so marketable and merchandisable, in how superhero movies, especially in the last decade, have taken over our lives, basically, to the point where we don't really think of anything else. I mean, how many after shows are there in our own Schmodown community who are talking about these things? Like, that's all people seem to think about these days. And I will say that Jade Wilson has a plot that's actually very similar. Speaking of Incredibles, her plot is actually very similar to the Screenslaver from Incredibles 2.
Okay.
Again, I apologize if I dropped the major spoiler here today.
You're good. That seemed very interesting. That makes me want to watch it more. I'm like, ooh, interesting. Well,
I mean, it's a great movie on its own. Just you gotta watch it just for the references, because they go deep. Like,
nice.
They post. I mean, you have to freeze frame every single frame of that movie, because they're walking through like Jump City, which is the city they live in. You just have to look at all the signs on the store, like, just to appreciate the amount of detail that went into this movie. Like, it's like the Lego Batman movie, but for the Teen Titans movie, and it's incredible.
Right.
So my number 3 is a villain who succeeded in his endeavors, even though they were a little reversed. I'm sure this is going to be a punt, but it's Thanos.
That's my number 3. Okay.
Mm-hmm. We'll punt it over. So that was your 3. So 50, your 3 then.
Yeah.
Okay, so my number 3, something that a lot of people probably overlook. It's a very overlooked villain, but Crossbones from the Captain America movies.
Nice.
You know, when people say that Marvel doesn't do good villains, I don't know what they're talking about, because maybe the main villains aren't as grandiose as some of the Dark Knight villains. However, some of the, let's say, minor villains is just as good, if not sometimes they're better than the main villains, but they get overshadowed because they're not the main villains. And Crossbones, first of all, you get to see his progression from pseudo shield agent in Captain America: The Winter Soldier, all the way to him fully embracing the Crossbones persona in Civil War. And we know, and when he shows up in Civil War, he hates Cap. Like, he hates him with the fire of 1,000 suns. And when he shows up, he's like, "There you are, you son of a bitch! I've been waiting for this!" And you can hear it in his voice, in the way that Frank Grillo. Wait, is it Frank Grillo the actor or Brock Romo the character? Okay, I was with this pick up. But when Frank Grillo says that line, you can hear the pain, the physical and emotional pain, because not only he went through an excruciating pain, he had a building fall on him. And he was basically left for dead by Captain America's sidekick. So you can hear the hatred and the anger and rage in his voice. And obviously, he goes out with the mission. He takes his own life, but in doing so, he sets in motion the the events that will eventually lead to the disassembling of the Avengers. Like, I mean, we're still seeing the effects today in WandaVision. Everything that happened, a part of the stuff that happened in part of Wanda's trauma on that show was the stuff that happened in Lagos, which was all his fault. Like, he tried to take Captain America down with him. He eventually did something even worse for Wanda. And I wouldn't be surprised, I really wouldn't be surprised if now that we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and spoiler alert, Zemo is on that show, I wouldn't be surprised if he's actually the one that sent Crossbones and that team of terrorists to steal that deadly neurotoxin gas thing.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
Yeah, because I didn't think about it either until yesterday, because we're learning things we didn't know about Zemo, that we didn't know about him in Civil War. We're learning it through the shows. And that's, again, one of the main benefits of having these shows, that they can develop the MCU further and retroactively reintroduce things that we didn't know about.
Yeah.
I'm liking, on a side note, I'm really liking Zemo in the show.
Yeah. If you know, you know. But let's go to my review.
My minor side note: how do you think Anaconda Brett would have responded to that scene in the bar?
Oh my gosh.
How about Flowers? I don't know, but I think Flowers would have been funny. Okay.
Yeah, I think he would have liked it.
Yeah, me
But going to my number 2, it might be a punt. And it's the Joker from The Dark Knight.
Well, that's kind of put from my number, not also my number 2 in a way.
Oh, okay. So we'll share it. Just he deserved that Oscar. Heath Ledger, he got it posthumously, and I think he's one of the best villains out there. And until my number 1 came about, he was probably one of my favorite. He was my favorite superhero villain. And just, you could do it for the opening scene alone. That opening scene to The Dark Knight with just people shooting, like they're working together, they're in the Joker mask, they're taking each other out, and just the pure genius of that beginning of that, and then the yellow bus. The thing too about the hospital blowing up, that it was supposed to blow up and he was supposed to walk away, but it didn't, and they only had 1 take to do that, and it was messing up. So he was like, I'm going to stay in character, I'm going to continue doing, and that's such a happy accident that it's so great in the movie. There it goes. Like, and I just think that he did such a great job as the Joker, and I love that movie, and I love his portrayal, and he deserved the Oscar, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I mean,
I don't want this to devolve into that kind of conversation, but he's not one of my favorites. Let's just put it that way. I mean, great written character. I don't think performance-wise it was as good as a lot of people are saying it is. Again, I don't want to harp on it too much because we can be here all day. But that's just my opinion.
You might have to come on Hot Takes. I
might as well do it.
But
that's really a topic for that show.
Okay, you take the Joker from the Dark Knight. It's funny because I was having trouble deciding between him or Joaquin from Joker. So let's do Joaquin. He made that his role. I mean,
another Oscar well deserved.
Yeah.
He was incredible in The Dark Knight. Joaquin, I don't know if he passes Heath, but he is right there neck and neck with him. He went so sick in the head, and yet, you don't feel sorry for him, but in a way you see why he's doing everything he did, and it was an incredible performance, an incredible movie, and a lot of people think it wouldn't have worked because there was no Batman. Guess what? You didn't need Batman for that movie.
Just like you didn't need Spider-Man for the Venom movie. Just saying.
Exactly.
Hey, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I love that movie. It's my second favorite comic book movie. Yeah, well done. Love it.
The reason I didn't put him on my list is because it is his story, and so therefore even though he's doing bad things, and he obviously does some bad things at the very end, but because he doesn't have an antagonist to him, like a protagonist kind of thing. He doesn't have a Batman. He doesn't. Yeah, it's society maybe. He doesn't have that, and so it's his story. He's the hero of his own story in the way that 50 was saying earlier. So he is a bad guy, but I don't view him as a villain in that movie per se because it is his story.
To quote Wreck-It Ralph, to quote Zangief in Wreck-It Ralph, you may be a bad guy, but that doesn't mean you're a bad guy. Also, I don't consider that a superhero movie. I consider it a supervillain movie. That's another reason why I don't have him on my list. And speaking of which, I think I may have been able to detect what Ben's number one might be. I think maybe. I don't know. I'm not too sure about that.
Well, you're number 2 at 50.
My number 2 is actually a pun from earlier. You got to give it to Michael Keaton's Vulture at some point.
Oh my God.
How this guy was able to go. The guy was Batman for a couple of years, and now he's a Spider-Man villain, and he also, in between that, he played Birdman, which is basically like a commentary on his career as Batman. And the fact that he didn't win an Oscar. He didn't win an Oscar for that, but he was nominated for an Oscar for playing that role. And a couple of years later, he went right back to the superhero realm with Adrian Toomes, as the Vulture in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I gotta be honest, the Vulture's never really been one of my favorites. And I think he's the second oldest Spider-Man villain of all time. Like, he appears all the way back in the Amazing Spider-Man number 2.
Oh wow!
So he's basically the second oldest Spider-Man villain, right after the Chameleon, if I remember correctly. Someone might correct me, but yeah. And he's never been one of my favorites. I never really particularly enjoyed his character. I felt like they did something cool with the character in the animated series from the 90s, where he was kind of an old man. He was stealing energy from younger people to make himself younger. He was kind of like a vampire in a way. There's been so many different iterations of the Vulture in other Spider-Man media. Probably my least favorite one is from the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, where he was basically like a half human, half Vulture hybrid. But I guess that's technically kind of the aesthetic of the show, because guess what? So many characters in Spider-Man are animal themed. So they made it a part of the show that about half of his rogues gallery on the show were humans that got this Oscorp virus that turns people into animals. That's why, like, the Vulture, the Rhino, the Lizard, that's where all these other characters came from. But I think that Michael Keaton is my favorite version of the Vulture, comics included.
He's so good as Adrian Toomes.
Sorry, it's a reflex.
I prefer him outside of the costume more than I do inside the virtual costume in Homecoming. That scene in the car between him and Peter, that effort amazing. That might be my favorite seen in any Spider-Man movie between Spider-Man and a villain, and they're not even in a costume.
Yeah.
And it's another villain that it gives you a reason to be a little sympathetic to him, because at the beginning he's working and then Tony Stark basically came and took his work away. So now he doesn't have that job and he already paid for all the equipment for that. So that's going to make him go bankrupt because of that. And it's another one of those, like, the big guy not thinking about the effects on the little guy, especially job wise. So it makes perfect sense for him to become a villain, and you're sympathetic in that sense.
Which opens up another can of worms who's really the bad guy in that kind of scenario, because it's a very relatable thing for us in real life. Like, a lot of people on this panel and people who probably watch the show have suffered from, quote unquote, the big man up top. A lot of us, I mean, I've recently been fired from a major corporation that had very little concern about their employees. I'm not going to mention them by name, obviously, but still.
And it is that moment where we love Tony Stark, we love Iron Man, we've seen his movies, we know what type of person he is, but you can definitely put yourself in Adrian Toombs' place there. Like, yeah, the big corporate guy is fucking me up, fucking me over. So
he made me just he really made me like a water right. Like, he was doing all these bad things.
Yeah.
But,
now you put that idea in my head. Well, how do you think Bryan Cranston would have done in that role?
Oh my! Oh, wow.
So
people want him to be Lex Luthor in the DCEU. Imagine him as Vulture for a second,
right?
Oh, wow.
And also, like you said earlier, the scene in the car. It proves another one of the major points that I always make about superhero content in general, is that people think it's all just the flashy costumes and the action, and it's not. It's the characters that really make the stories. One of my favorite comic books of all time was from Injustice: Gods Among Us, Year 1, where in the midst of you have Superman going bad and killing people, and there's an invasion of Apocalypse and parademons and stuff, and in the middle of all that, you have one issue where basically the entire issue is basically Superman and the Flash playing chess. That's the entire issue, while they're talking politics. The politics of a world where Superman does the things that he does, and some of the best written comic book issues I've ever read.
Wow.
I have to check that out. So let's go into our honorable mentions.
Well, before we do that, I want to share Matt's that he sent them. I'll just read them off real quick. Number 5 is Hydra.
Hail Hydra.
Hail Hydra. Number 4 is Zod from Man of Steel.
Kneel before Zod.
Number 3 is Joker, Jack Nicholson. Number 2 is Killmonger, and number 1 is Thanos.
All right. So I'll go into. Okay, what were you saying, 50?
I love the fact that 3 of us have had Joker on our list, but it was 3 different Jokers,
right?
And none of them were the best Joker, Mark Hamill. Fight me on this.
I'll fight you on that. Maybe not today.
Bring it.
We'll be here all day, but I will fight you on that. So why don't we go into our honorable mentions? So you want to take it?
Yeah. So I chose Kingpin from the Spider-Verse movie.
Okay.
Ooh, that Kingpin.
Baron Zemo, and I might just have some recency bias because I did just watch the Falcon and the Winter Soldier episode 3. However, I did really like him as a villain in Civil War as well, and I think he was a very good villain, and also another villain who accomplishes what he set out to do. Yep. And then Ulysses Claw, just because, like, man, Andy Serkis just does a great fucking job as Ulysses Scott. It makes me laugh the entire time. And then from the original Iron Man, Obadiah Stane.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave
Nice.
with a box of scraps.
But Ben, your number, your honorable mentions.
Yeah, my honorable mention is a lot from Superman 2, Knock Off from Spider-Man 2, Scarecrow from Batman Begins, and Reno Reporter from the Power Rangers movie in 2017.
Ooh, nice.
Okay.
I didn't even consider that. That's great.
What's your honorable mentions, Smithy?
Okay, so my honorable mentions, the aforementioned Baron Zemo. And yes, we are calling him Baron Zemo now because watch Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That's all I can say. Again, I push back on people who say that everything he set out to do was already in motion before he showed up. I push back so hard on that because what he did is he took those events and accelerated them. That would have taken three movies. If it not for his involvement, it all happened in the same movie. So I push back on that. Hold on, I had it. Oh yeah, I have a soft spot for Juggernaut in Deadpool 2, not X-Men: The Last Stand. I have a soft spot for Juggernaut in that movie, and the one that is the least can be considered the least superhero movie out of the ones we mentioned today, but it's John Hurt's character in V for Vendetta.
Oh, yeah. It's based off a comic book.
It is based on a comic book, and you could argue that V is kind of a superhero / vigilante stuff, but yeah, John Hurt made the movie, and may he rest in peace.
Yes. I love that movie. It's one of my favorite DC movies.
Remember the 5th of November.
The gunpowder treason and plot.
I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever
be forgot. There we go.
I never saw it.
Ah, sad face. Okay, but I guess we'll go to our number ones.
So, what's your number one?
My number one is Killmonger from Black Panther.
Ooh.
And
Very good.
I love his character. I love that, again, we spoke on this before, but a villain that you sympathize with. And it's a villain that you're like, he's right. He's right. He's going about it in the wrong way, but he is absolutely right. And you see that with him, in London at the museum, and kind of just like, no, this is you guys appropriated this from us. You took this away from Africans. This doesn't belong to you. I'm taking this shit. I'm taking this mask too because I'm just feeling it. Or the fact too that just his story, just of he goes up to the to his apartment and finds out his dad is dead. The only person he knows, finds out that he's Wakandan. He ends up like fighting against, like, why did you guys not protect me and my father? Why did you guys not take care of me and my father? I am one of you. And also, why you, with all this technology and all this prosperousness that's happening in your country, why are you not sharing this with other Black people around the world? Don't you see how much that we are suffering, and you're just here in isolation? And Nakia is saying the same things as Killmonger, but Nakia does it in a different way. And so you could see that Nakia and Killmonger are saying the same things, but Nakia goes on a humanitarian way, and T'Challa ends up changing and agreeing with them and opening up his borders, and also opening up stuff for Black people, starting in Oakland. And so it's another where the villain is right. They just went about it in the back. And the scene, oh my God, the scene where he's the sunset and he goes, bury me in the ocean with my ancestors, who knew that it was better
because they knew death was better than bondage.
Death was better than bondage. Oh my god, that just is so emotional, and I just I love him as a character. I love that movie, and I love too that it was nominated for Best Picture because definitely deserved it.
Yes.
And so yeah, Killmonger is my number one.
So let me ask you something. He died at the spoiler alert, he died at the end of the movie. How would you feel if they brought him back to be the new Black Panther? I'm not saying they're going to do it, but if they did do that, how would you feel about that?
I think that he shouldn't come back because it would undercut that scene.
Okay.
In the same way that I loved, this is going to be spoiler for Zack Snyder's Justice League. I love that movie. I think that movie is wholeheartedly better than the than the Joss Whedon cut. I think it's amazing, but I do not like that they undercut the scene with Lois and Martha by having it be Martian Manhunter. So like, yeah, that undercut that scene for me because it was just like that beautiful moment, and because of the beautiful moment of him with the sunset dying, saying those lines, like that would undercut it for me if he comes back.
Yeah, again, it's all a matter of execution, but I think it's best that the dates that I think when talking about the MCU, I think some dead characters should stay dead. Not all of them, but definitely some of them. And Killmonger is another one that I had considered for my list, but decided not to have him on my list because of the same reasons we mentioned earlier. He's a bad guy, but he's definitely not a villain because he's doing righteous things, going about it the wrong way, like you said. But we always say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and that sentence is on full display on Killmonger. He done a lot of bad stuff for mostly good reasons, and he's coming from a good place, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Nicely put. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to back in it. I think you should stay dead, but it is something I heard. Not too much anymore, but like when it first happened, I did hear a lot of people saying they want him back as a new Black Panther. I'm like, I don't think that would
think,
work.
yeah, I don't think he can be Black Panther though, because of just the way he went about things in the first movie. I don't think he could be Black Panther.
Right.
Also, I mean, just narratively, I don't think the Wakandans would allow it.
Yeah.
Plus, he lost in fair combat to T'Challa, and died. So
I'm really curious to see how they manage Black Panther 2. But that's a topic for another day.
yeah, going back to Falcon and Winter Soldier. Watch the show, people. But addressing the big spoiler reveal at the end there, do you think T'Challa is still alive when that show is taking place? And do you think we'll get references to him? I don't necessarily need to see him on screen, obviously.
Yeah, I think
I
think we'll get reference to him. I don't think we'll fully know what happens or how Black Panther 2 is going to go about, like from a TV show. I think we'll get that more in a movie. But he was alive during most of the filming of this, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does have a cameo.
I believe there was a rumor out there that said there's a chance we could get him. I think Kevin Feige came out and debunked it, but you never know.
Of course he would. Of course he
Right.
would.
They debunked stuff before. Remember, Benedict Cumberbatch is definitely not Khan. He's definitely not Khan.
That wasn't Kevin Feige though.
That wasn't Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige also debunked a bunch of stuff that didn't have to be posted.
But yeah, I was using a reference as there's studio execs and directors who debunk things.
No, I understand that, but they feel different because of the actor who's not really around anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But the thing too is he was around during that time.
True.
So they don't know that he was gonna. No one knew what he was going through, so they could have had scenes with him. And I think it's a more disservice to get rid of those scenes because he's no longer with us than
Yeah,
to keep those scenes. So if it does happen, I'm not saying it will, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, I would say that's a good 25% chance. Maybe that's a little higher, I don't know.
And also, if that happens, how poetic would it be that Chadwick Boseman's final appearance on screen is as Black Panther, the character that essentially most people are going to remember him for,
Yeah.
and arguably one of the most iconic fictional African American characters of all time.
Agreed. Okay, my number one, Magneto. I know that. What?
Not what I was thinking. That your number one would be. I thought your number one would be X-24.
No, I thought about that also. He's more of a side villain. There's not really a clear villain in that movie. So I didn't want to pour anybody that I wasn't sure about. But Magneto, you feel for this character. You see, in X-Men 1, you see him being pulled away from his parents in a concentration camp. Which you then in first class set him on a path of destruction. He sets out to protect his people at any cost. And only when he has to, he teams up with Professor X for the greater good. You really feel for this. He goes back and forth. He has a great friendship with Charles. He's a beautiful character with a tragic ending. Whenever you think he's happy, they pull it away from him to send him right back on the path of evil. And he's scary. He's scary that he can control any metal, anywhere, anytime. He's an incredible character and an incredible villain to me. And
oh God, sorry.
And two actors were equally as incredible playing him, Michael Fassbender and Sir Ian McKellen. They're not one above another, both of them are equal.
And two things on that is I love his character. I view him more as an anti-hero. I don't view him as like a villain. And the other thing is, so I know people have been speculating X-Men in the MCU, and if they were to do that, Magneto to me is so tied with being a Holocaust survivor. So how do you think the MCU would go about it, especially too because now we're in like what 2025?
Yeah, they would have he can't be a Holocaust survivor in the MCU. They would have to make it different. I don't know, man. I would put Magneto. I would get. God, what is his name? Who is the main actor in Get Out?
Daniel Kaluuya.
Yeah, I would make him Magneto, and I would put him from the civil rights movement.
But he's already in the MCU.
Really?
Yeah, he's in Black Panther. He's Wakabi.
Oh.
Maybe you could have David Oyelowo.
Yeah,
instead.
And I think even though the civil rights is a great thing, I don't think it's at the same magnitude as the Holocaust. I think it needs to be like you could do like the Rwandan genocide, or maybe do something close to 50, but like the Israel-Palestine conflict, kind of. But that would also be getting into,
but it's nothing close like the Rwandan genocide or the Holocaust. What I will say though is, Saul, you know this better than me. What did you say the district was where Mulan was shot? Where they have those concentration camps? What if Magneto was Asian and he escaped from one of those camps? And again, he saw the worst of humanity.
If he was a Uyghur, is the Muslim group in China in the Xinjiang region that they shot Mulan.
He could be Muslim from that region in China. And again, to me, the Holocaust isn't necessarily tied to Magneto. What is tied to Magneto is that he was a child when he experienced the worst of humanity. Like, even you can even set this thing in like the 1800s. What would have happened if Joseph Merrick, also known as the Elephant Man, who also saw the worst of humanity, what would have happened if he had those types of powers? And if you haven't seen The Elephant Man, it's a great movie, by the way, also starring the late great John Hurt. But so to me, I would like it if it was a Holocaust survivor, because obviously Jewish Israeli wouldn't even be around here if it wasn't for the Holocaust, obviously. But to me, story-wise, that's not as important. It's not important the actual event that happened, but it's what that event represents. So if I were to do this, and thank the Lord Helix, I don't have to do this job, but if I was in charge of the MCU, here's what I would do. I would have had two separate MCUs, one with just the Avengers, the one that we already had, and one separately just for the X-Men, set in the 1960s, which is where Magneto and Charles met. And obviously, because it's me, I would have them both meet in Israel, because that's where they met originally in the comics. I would have the couple of movies set in the 1960s with Magneto and Charles and a bunch of other X-Men, let them grow into those roles. And after a few movies, there's some sort of dimension hopping, time traveling, multiverse collapse event. All the characters from the 1960s show up in modern day MCU without aging. That's the only way I can see this happening. And yeah, it goes back into another core part of the X-Men mythology, is that they didn't just came about. Mutants have been around since the dawn of humanity, since ancient Egypt, as evidenced by Apocalypse. So they've been persecuted, feared, and hated for centuries, if not millennia. And to just introduce, to do something stupid like something that happened in something WandaVision, something Doctor Strange, multiverse, Dormammu, mutants exist. I think it would take away from the core storyline of persecution and segregation that has been a part of the X-Men comics, the X-Men media across all mediums for decades now. And I think I can forego the Holocaust survivor angle, but you cannot take that away from the X-Men. That's the way I see it. So, but if that happens, and these two universes collapse and merge together, the people who have hated, and generations of people who grew up hating mutants, they come to the main MCU with them. So they bring the generational hatred of mutants with them into a world that loves and worships the Avengers. And like I said, that's the only way I would do it. But again, thank Arceus, I don't have to do that.
Well, you know what? I don't envy Disney, and I don't envy Kevin Feige, because he had to do this. And no matter what he does, he's going to piss somebody off. You know that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a thankless job. It's a thankless job.
So let me ask you guys this while we're on this topic. What is your number one X-Men movie? Do you have one?
Logan! I know my mom is in the chat and she hates Logan, but
Deadpool. Sorry, no, I'm just kidding. I mean, it works. You know what? I'm not just kidding. It's Deadpool.
Yes. And I have to say Logan myself. I love that movie.
I love Logan. It honestly, it's Logan, but my funny answer and that it was Deadpool.
The actual answer.
Yeah.
I think Logan is my second favorite movie of all time. It
Wow.
is incredible
High
to me.
praise.
It gets me every time.
You and I are Logan brothers. Put it there.
But yeah,
Yeah.
50. Your favorite X-Men movie and your number one.
Yeah.
My
He's in
number
it,
one. I mean, it's pretty
Yeah.
guessable by now. It's a
Yeah.
punt from earlier. Thanos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about supervillains that actually succeeded. Thanos did succeed, and I mean, he died still believing he succeeded. Now, obviously, they needed time travel to undo what he did, but Thanos basically went to his grave thinking and believing that what he did was right and that he actually succeeded in doing what he did. And I so go against this stupid idea that Infinity War was an incomplete movie, that it was a part one of a two-parter. It was not.
It was Thanos' story.
Yes, absolutely. It was a complete movie, start to finish, where the main villain is the main character. And we see that from the first scene, from his opening monologue in the first scene. And that, by the way, is the main reason why, if you look at the end credits of most MCU movies, you have like Captain America will return in The Avengers, Ant-Man will return in Civil War, Spider-Man will return. In Infinity War, Thanos will return, not any of the other characters. And that's further to push the idea that the Avengers were in the story. It's called Avengers Infinity War, but they were not the main character of the story.
I would say.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I would say
Right back.
in Infinity War, the main villains are the Avengers. All Thanos wanted to do is help the universe by clearing it up by other people.
See, I wouldn't call the Avengers the villains. I wouldn't go that far. But to go to what you're saying there, Ben, is that another villain that is correct and right, just going about it in the wrong way. Because, I mean, and I love too that they made the comic version and then they made it better. Where, like, the comic version, he's just trying to get Lady Death. He's trying to get in Lady Death's pants, and that's why he kills half the universe. And that, like, it's funny, it's cool, but that's not compelling enough for me. Whereas this, he's like, environmentally, humans are polluting our world and probably other worlds in the MCU. I hate the movie because he gets older and weak. Aw.
That's the point of the movie, Mom. That's the point of the movie.
But with Thanos is that, like, he's a humanitarian. He's like basically like an eco-terrorist, which you can understand
Massive scale.
on a very massive scale,
Universal scale.
A universal scale. But you can understand where he's coming from, because as someone who's very environmentally conscious myself, like, I'm not gonna go do what Thanos did and kill half the universe, but I can understand where he's coming from.
Yeah. He's, to go back to my number 5 pick, he's very, well, obviously not the eco-friendly part, but he's very much like Elijah Price, a character that would go through to incredible lengths to prove that he's right. And again, I like Thanos, which I believe he's right here somewhere on this poster, right over there. You probably can't see him, but Thanos has never been one of my favorite characters in the comics. I basically didn't even know about him until I watched the movies. And I've been a Marvel fan for at least a decade before those movies started coming out. But he's never been one of my favorite characters. Obviously, his status as one of the greats of all time is cemented in comic book history because he killed half the universe with a snap. Like, how many supervillains can you say have done that? But still, the motives, whatever. And I mean, he basically killed everyone for like what, 5 minutes before his granddaughter Nebula took the glove from him. So yeah, big deal. I mean, he became God for like 5 seconds because he beat he beat eternity and became eternity. He became a god for 5 seconds. Big deal, right? But in the movie, he won for 5 years, and it basically took time travel to undo what he did. And if the rules of time travel in the MCU will ever be explained, technically speaking, there is a universe out there where Thanos actually won because multiverse and such.
So, okay, let me ask you guys a question. Fifty, I love you and stop there. What would you do if you had the Infinity Gauntlet with all the stones?
Probably die because you saw what it did to Thanos and Hulk. What makes you think I can last 5 seconds with this?
I would probably put it on display and not touch it because I don't want to die.
Okay.
So it would be on display.
I would do the same. I would definitely put it on display, and definitely I would have the Infinity Gauntlet. And if I had the power and the ability, I would collect all the Infinity Stones, put it on the glove, and just put it like you said, on display somewhere where only I can see it, so no one else knows where it is, because no one should have that kind of power. That's what I would do with this thing.
All right, you guys. Good answers.
We're killjoys
Ben?
for Ben. Yeah, what would you do, Ben?
I don't know.
How are you going to ask us without having an answer yourself?
You don't
Come
get a free pass, my friend. You don't get a free pass. You ask the question. You have to answer it too.
Okay. I would, with no consequences, I would get rid of like all the illness and all the sickness in the
You can't say no consequences, but because if you do that, you do the exact opposite of what Thanos was trying to do in the first place. Overpopulation.
Overpopulation.
Oh, right.
That's why again, no one can have that kind of power. It's like a genie. If I had a genie in a lamp, I would just set him free on the condition that he loses his powers, because no one should have that power, and wishes are so unpredictable, and as me and Ben know firsthand, magic always comes with a price.
Have you guys been getting into some brujeria lately? Like, are you doing some witchcraft?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
No, we're just big fans of Once Upon a Time. That's all.
Okay.
All right, on that note, 50, where can everybody find you? Oh wait, no, before we do that, 50, here's your next week.
That's right. So,
we feel on topic.
My topic for next week, which is a perfect jumping off point from this week's topic. So and for the first time ever, this is something that I've actually been sitting on for a while, and I can't believe I haven't used it yet. But I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge fan of Bat in the Sun and everything that they're doing, where they take two iconic characters and make them fight each other in a fight basically to the death. Like, they had Superman versus Thor, they had Wolverine versus Batman, Gandalf versus Darth Vader. They have these crazy matchups that you normally wouldn't think of, but you're so happy to see. Like, and obviously some of the more obvious ones, like Captain America versus Master Chief, and Nightwing versus Winter Soldier. So my topic for next week is, if you could decide a matchup, which two characters would you put up against one another for a Bat in the Sun video? Like, if you had unlimited budget, and obviously animation is not off the table, because they did have Iron Man versus Optimus Prime, which was fully animated. But yeah, go crazy with it. Which two characters would you put up against each other? And some rules. For the sake of keeping it fair, I'm only going to allow a fair fight, like either our one-on-one or 2-on-2, because they had Joker and Harley versus Deadpool and Domino. So that's a fair fight. But at one point they had like 4 characters from like The Walking Dead, Max Payne, Hitman 47, and one other character, basically all against each other. So nothing like that. It's either a 1-on-1, 2-on-2, no 2-on-1s and such. And another rule: don't do anything that's already been done. Like they had a bunch of these. So
that's going to be a lot of work, 50, to go through and see what they've done.
Okay. I'll
because I haven't seen. I've heard of theirs because I heard about it the first time on Batman Beyond, Fat Man Beyond with Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin. Yeah, but so I haven't seen any of their videos. I don't know how many they've done. That would be a lot to go through.
I can just send you a list of all the ones that they did, if it makes it easier. Okay, and not really a rule, but more of a suggestion. Try to be creative with it. Like, don't just put Green Arrow versus Hawkeye because they're both archers. Try to be a little bit more creative.
Get ready for some anime.
And I already have my top 5. So basically, all I need to do is come up with.
I'm gonna be really upset. The one that I just wrote down here, so I don't forget. I'm gonna be really upset if they've done it already.
Okay. And again, I mean, they had Batman in like 3 fights already. They had like 4 or 5 fights with Vader and Mom. We already had that. It's a movie called Superman 3 with Richard Pryor, and it's terrible. But I'm pretty sure you and your husband have already seen it a couple of times. Just saying. But, yeah. So, like I said, where was I? Oh yeah, you can have characters. You can have multiple fights with the same character, so it's perfectly fine. But if a character that you chose has already been in a different fight against someone else, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
Right.
It's 50. Where can the people find you?
Well, I'm sorry. 50, please. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me on my channel, which is my name right here, 50 Shades of Geek. You can also find me on my gaming channel, 50 Shades of Gaming. You can find me on Twitch regularly. I don't have much of a schedule, but I do a series on Twitch where I try, strong emphasis on try, to beat all of Pokemon Shield using only one Shedinja, which is incredibly frustrating, especially considering Twitch only shows videos for 2 weeks, which is really annoying to me. But you can also check out my Patreon. Speaking of Pokemon, I'm designing a Pokemon fan game based on Israel, the country where I live in, and yeah, that's all you can, where you can find me. And just because I didn't have my Lion King reference for the day, I just wanted to say that most of the villains we had on the show today are basically just like Scar. They were the heroes of their own stories, and especially if you go into the Lion Guard, where basically Scar saved everybody, but no one knew about it. The only person he did tell him was Mufasa, and Mufasa kind of treated him badly for it, and that's why. Well, part of the reason why he became bad, but there's another reason which I won't go into in a moment. But yeah, remember, kids, all villains are like Scar. They're doing the wrong things for the right reasons, mainly for themselves.
Okay.
I had to put it in there somewhere.
Yeah, you had to.
Yeah.
I had the thing ready. I just couldn't figure out when to organically put it into the conversation. Then right at the end, I just said, "Fuck it, let's do it right. We're doing it live.
You're doing it live. So where can everyone find you?
You can find me at SoulGovan on Twitter, and you can also find me later today on John Roca's YouTube channel for the Ultimate Schmodown After Show. We're gonna have a page for Brady and Lon Harris on it, so go check that out.
That's a show. If Lon Harris is going to be there, that's one hell of a show.
You can find me at MadRadio2. You can find me on this channel every Tuesday with Matt on Shooting the Breeze, every Friday on Recapping the Past, Every Sunday on Men's Hot Things, every Saturday right here on Get Ready with Everyone. And you can also find me in a few hours on my Small Down show where we go into players' careers. Today we're looking into the Ringers. Cody Hall, Carpenter, and RB3.
RB3.
RB3, you're right. And on that note, thank you everyone for joining us. Stay ready and smash cancer.
Smash
Smash
cancer.
Cancer.